Good morning. Many thanks for staying with us right here on Daybreak on this 25th day of November 2020. And right now we get into the next part of the program where we focus on the state of the economy this Wednesday. Remember, you can weigh in on this conversation. 22422 is the SMS line and the hashtag is Daybreak. And that's actually a story you'll see on page 2 of the Standard. Let me just reference the title here. COVID-19 tax goodies to go as Treasury CS Ukur Yatani battles to pay debt. The author here writing that Kenya is under pressure to repay billions of shillings within the next 7 months. The shilling is weakening. Counties are making demands for money and foreign exchange reserves are at a 6-month low. Now, this comes on the heels of an economy devastated by COVID-19, dampening avenues available to the government to raise money. Let me just give you one more point. Now, as a result, Treasury has been forced to tap into the highest amount it has ever borrowed through overdraft facilities from the Central Bank of Kenya, as well as to multinational donors for a way out. And fearing the worst, the country has approached the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and World Bank for a 400 billion loan and expects to spend part of the money to repay some of its loans to foreign creditors. Now, I know some of you are watching and listening to this and thinking, how will this affect me as an individual, whether you are employed, whether you're doing your business somewhere? And that's a discussion we want to have right now. And we have the right experts to delve into this from different sectors. Joining me in studio is Dr. Jim McPhee. He's a lecturer at Strathmore University. And joining me virtually, we have Mohamed Hersi, chair of the Kenya Tourism Federation. We also have Phyllis Wakiaga, who is the CEO, Kenya Association of Manufacturing. And finally, Samuel Karanja, who is the chair of the Kenya Importers Association. I'll be talking to each of them about this. And you can also call in from about 7 o'clock. Our phone lines will be open and we'll be able to hear your thoughts on this topic for today and how 2020 economically has been for you. I know Kenyans have gone through a lot, and we want to try and seek solutions moving forward from that. Now, of course, Kenya's economic growth, it was expected to be about 5.4% this year, has now dropped to about 2.6%. This is what Ukur Yatani told us in September. And so the first thing I want to know from, let me start with my guest here in studio, Dr. McPhee, is those interventions, Doctor, that were put in by the government from April to cushion many affected by COVID-19. In your view, have they had the desired impact?
Well, I think it's very important to keep in mind that many people have actually lost their jobs. And the fact is that this has cushioned the people who actually still have employment. Mm-hmm. Many people are right across the economy have actually taken pay cuts. And obviously that has then helped businesses, because I think it's so important here that, you know, when you talk about a business making a loss, it's not just simply some figment of your imagination. It's important to keep in mind that, let's suppose your cost of production is 100 million shillings, and you then are going to sell those goods. You can't get customers, so you've got to sell those goods for 80 million. You could argue, well, you don't need to do that. Hold out until you're able to sell the goods for more than 100 million, but this doesn't happen. So you then sell your goods for 80 million, you've got a loss of 20 million shillings. Where's that going to come from? Now, clearly by reducing the wage bill, by actually reducing the amount of tax, the government has actually made things a little bit easier. To my mind, this thing needs to continue. And you've read this morning, okay, that this is not going to continue.
It might not be sustainable.
Well,
the
problem really here, okay, is that, you know, I was thinking a little bit. One of the things that we've saved a hell of a lot of money on is just simply travel, because the members of the county assemblies and the counties themselves, those people do an incredible amount of traveling. That has been saved. But the point here really is that, you know, obviously many people in government have not actually undergone pay cuts. And the result, of course, is that the wage cost in government is incredibly high. What about the output? I feel that, you know, the output from government has got to be much, much, much improved. It's things of, you know, each individual working in government has got to realize that, look, I've got to make doing business in Kenya easier, not more difficult. And we have even cabinet secretaries who think that they are experts in a particular field and they actually know nothing about it. We had the governor of Nyeri a number of years ago, he said, look, I tell you what, deliver your coffee to those KPCU warehouses in Calatina, and I'll sell your coffee. And he went to the United States 4 times. He never sold any coffee, and the people were not paid for their coffee. So it's important here to keep in mind that there are experts in the field. We have many middlemen in Kenya. We've got to try to rein them in.
I see.
But the point here really is that we've got to see, yes, the government, you know, to my mind, the government has got to look back and say, now look, in many industries, there are too many little taxes and cesses and things like this, which make Kenya uncompetitive. And unless we're aware of that, we're going to destroy our economy in Kenya.
I actually want to get into some sectors right now specifically. Let's start with Phyllis Wakiaga, manufacturing. I don't know if you've heard what Dr. Mafi has had to say. The year isn't over yet, but we're definitely reflecting back on the year that's been. In your view, pre-COVID-19, as COVID-19 came in, government puts in various measures to cushion different sectors. When you look back over the last 7, 8, 9 months, what's your assessment of how the manufacturing sector has fared?
Thanks, Wahiga. Yes, I have listened to Dr. Mafi and his comments, and I agree with him on a number of things. But first and foremost, of course, COVID has hit the manufacturing sector like other sectors of the economy. If you look at the Q2 results for this year, there was a contraction of about 3.9% in the sector compared to a growth of 4% in Q2 last year. So it's definitely had an impact. And a lot of it has really been because of the diminishing demand in the market, because we have certain sectors, and I can see Mohammed Hersi is here with us, like the hospitality, the hotel industry, that remained closed for a number of months this year. We also have the education sector. The other challenge has also been the constraints in cash flow at household and individual level, because a number of people have lost their jobs. And also the measures that had to be put in place to contain COVID did affect the wheel of the economy. So that has impacted the manufacturing sector. In terms of the measures that had been put in place by government to try and cushion the economy, we did have things like the VAT refunds, which were paid off, but that is a measure that is really just paying off money that is owed to people. But some of the ones like the VAT reduction to 14%, the corporate tax reduction and the pay reduction, what they did is that they did unleash some cash flow into the economy because people were able to strengthen their purchasing power. So those were received positively by the sector. So the reintroduction of them again in January is a concern because it's something we've been saying that we should consider holding them back. But more than anything, we should also consider holding back any additional measures that will affect business, like the incoming minimum tax, which is supposed to take effect from January 1st. If we are saying that businesses have been ravaged and people have lost their jobs, a move like this could also impact the economy negatively because it will affect business, especially those that are low-margin businesses, could affect the cost of products also and affect startups in terms of people looking at Kenya as an unfavorable investment environment. Over and above all the other costs and taxes that are in the economy that I think Dr. McPhee also spoke about. So that's my initial contribution to this conversation. Thank you.
Okay, I'll have a few more questions for you and I'll come back for that, but let me bring in Mohammed Hersi live from Mombasa as well. Mohammed, I don't even know where to begin when it comes to tourism. What a year it's been for the global tourism fraternity. But nevertheless, I think I saw some data that showed that in the first half of 2020, 45% of tourism businesses in Kenya estimated a revenue loss of about 2.5 million Kenya shillings. As an effect of COVID, 23% said they would lose from 500,000 to about 1 million, while 15% spoke of a loss of revenue of about 500,000 Kenya shillings as well. Put some perspective to those numbers. Sometimes statistics don't really paint a picture of what has been going on. And as we move towards December, are we seeing some sort of recovery? Are there signs of that? How would you describe this sector for us this morning?
Thank you. Good morning, and good morning to all the viewers and my fellow panelists. The tourism is the most affected actually when it comes to COVID. But on the other hand, it's not only Kenya, it's the whole world that has been affected. So the main thing is, what are we going to do about it? And I think that's the most critical part. How has tourism been affected? Let me say this. In March when COVID came to town and April we started closing down, it basically meant that up to August, all our properties were closed when it comes to hotels. Travel agents, airlines simply closed shop. Aircrafts were all grounded. So there's simply no business. So you can comfortably say 6 months, or actually 7 months of the year, entire tourism industry was shut. Then we reopened in August. Now, you're dealing with human beings, and one of the factors for travel is safety and security. And this particular case, we are talking of safety from a virus that is actually invisible to the eye. In the past, we've dealt with terror threats. That was something different. It is physical. You can put barriers. You can do many things and physical interventions. But in this particular case, it was very, very difficult. So you don't expect people to start packing their bags and to travel. Then international travel is yet to resume. But I would like to thank, on behalf of the industry, the domestic tourism players, the domestic tourism traveler. They've been very, very supportive. Of course, in August, they were a little bit careful not to come out, but September was good. October was even better. And they came out in large numbers. And the places that have done well are the beach resorts. And thanks to ease of connection like the Madaraka Express, the low-cost carriers, and our national carrier that is opening up once again, that has helped a big time. But to answer your question, where are we, specifically when it comes to international tourism, I'm afraid to tell you we have not moved an inch. We have lost over 100 billion now. You can comfortably say $1 billion. And we're estimating close to what? 140, 150 billion by the end of the year. You asked about December, how are things coming out? Domestic tourism, again, is what is going to help us. And it's been proven worldwide that everybody is saying, you know what, domestic tourism will recover first. And thanks to our campaigns, including with Ministry of Tourism, which happened, 2007, 2008, when he had the infamous post-election violence, we embraced domestic tourism. And that has really helped us. So domestic is what is going to recover first. And it's already recovering slowly. And even meetings are now happening. Then moving forward is regional. And the good news, I'll learn to tell you things like what? Ugandan Airlines that is going to commence their flights once again, or rather to resume their flights, Entebbe to Mombasa direct, which was interrupted by COVID. So these are some of the things that's happening. But however, on the other side, international, that will take a long time, and we're in for a long haul. And I'll explain that later.
Okay, yes, and I'll come back to you to look at the way forward. We'll talk a little bit about 2021. I think we're now at a time of the year when we can really begin to project what the next year could look like. Samuel Karanja, I hope we also have you on the line, chair of the Kenya Importers Association. And I know for you, you might have a similar narrative with Hershey. Flights were stopped for quite some time. I know even the shipping ecosystem was affected as well. At some point, no goods were coming in. And then there was, of course, the whole issue of COVID-19 and mitumbas as well. And I know many traders complained they couldn't get their goods in time and so forth. Where are we right now in regards to that? And talk to me a little bit about the measures that the government put in place, the interventions that they put in place in April. How many of your members felt those interventions made a difference? And should they be amended into the new year, how significant will that be for those who you serve?
Thank you, Ahiga, for having me this morning. Importers have been immensely affected, and you know it's a worldwide pandemic. So goods have not been coming to Kenya, and especially for us who rely heavily on importations. So we find that there was a lockdown completely of goods coming to Kenya. And so when there was a little bit of the trickling in of the goods, then we had issues with mitumba industry, and we were able to intervene with the government. But one of the things that we have had issues with the government is the implementation of the policies. Because the policies mainly are on paper, then when it comes to implementation, especially for the mitumba, you find that the handles which have been put by the government are not really realistic. And you find that the Mitumba Association, who are under us, they have issues with the implementation, because when you look at fumigation of the goods, which is done from the source, then when it comes here, it takes a longer time also to do the fumigation and to go through the processes. And the moment your cargo stays 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, maybe at the ICDN or maybe in Kilindini, Mombasa, the government is not waiving, the customs warehouse duty. And so when you look at that, I think it has to be a very realistic approach towards that. Now, most of the traders who benefit from importation, they have their shops. And I would like to say this, that Wahiga, when you go to downtown, you find that some of the shops have been closed, and that's because of lack of supply. Because if you open today and there's nothing to sell, and tomorrow, and you have then, and the rent is accumulating, and you find also even the landlord is also looking for money. And when you look at that scenario, you find that most of the people cannot be able to sustain to have a shop in the downtown, and people have opted to go online, maybe to get a few goods and they can sell online. Some of the few goods which have been coming in by air, and the government has intervened, especially for the goods which have been coming in by air, but they're also very expensive, and that's why you find some of these commodities are quite expensive when they come to the market. Now, when it comes to government intervention, especially for us importers, I remember about almost 3 weeks ago, the president was able to launch what we call the Bomber Shed. The Bomber Shed is an intervention and a partnership between Kenya Railways and KRA and also the importers, whereby we have the consolidation point of all small, medium entrepreneurs in the country. Now, the reason why the government did and the president did that is to make sure that the clearing of goods, of consolidated goods of the SME are done efficiently in the country. If they come here, they shouldn't stay for long. And the traders themselves can be able to pay taxes directly to KRA. And that one is going to intervene, because when you look at the issues with consolidators, we still have government not being able to sort the consolidation issue, though they are doing the vetting right now. But when you look at the cost of importation is becoming high. And that is why now the trader just pays the logistics to the consolidator and pays taxes directly to the, to the government. And the good thing that the government has done is also to lower the caps, the COC cost. The COC cost for Higa was about 0.5% of the gross. And so you find that in a container you are paying like 300,000, but the president was able to reduce it to 0.06, something like that. So you find that they are trying, the policies, there are some which are working and some which are not working.
Okay, I think that's a good way to summarize it. Dr. McPhee, at some point I was beginning to get not depressed, but concerned. I mean, I feel like as every speaker spoke, each of them really expressed various challenges in their sector as well. I hope we'll have some good news or some hope for Kenyans, before we wrap up this interview a bit later on. But let's talk about jobs, because you did get into jobs, when we first started with you. Our unemployment statistics so far, I think from the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, say that unemployment doubled between April and June to 10.4% from 5.2% in March. 1.7 more Kenyans rendered unemployed following widespread business closures. So combined, since the turn of the year, under or just about 2 million Kenyans have lost their jobs. And the question I know many would have this morning is, when do you think we're going to get these jobs back? And what will it take to get them back?
You see, we in some way are our own worst enemies. Because I think it's very important to realize that COVID is something which is here, it actually exists. I know I've got friends who said, this is all made up, etc. It doesn't really exist, etc. But I think, you see, we've got to have people taking precautions so that the spread of the virus is contained. If we have that, we then will start seeing jobs coming back. Because the moment we can start working freely in the economy, what's going to happen is that demand will immediately increase. People will then be able to go back to the office. Githinji Gitahi, who's the head of AMREF, he was saying that the virus is actually being spread by contact in offices at the moment. So this is something that we've got to be aware of, so that if we can really flatten the curve, as they say, if we can reduce the number of people contracting the virus, that will then enable the economy to start taking off again. And I think that is the most important thing. You see, I always feel that in Kenya we underreport unemployment, especially amongst the youth. In South Africa, they have 58% unemployment among young people. Now that is, you take 100 people, 100 young people, 42 have jobs, 58 don't. And, are we better off than South Africa? Mm-hmm. I don't know if we are. Maybe we are, but certainly when you look at the numbers reported by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the level of unemployment, to my mind, is really doctored downwards. Our unemployment rate is much higher than that. And of course, as you rightly say, many people have lost their jobs. They're now going back to production and so on, some of them. But we've got to be more careful in looking after our health, and that is the thing that will bring back the jobs, to my mind.
In your view. One then would ask this, what do we do in the meantime? We don't know when we'll flatten the curve. You know, we don't know.
Well, I would say
we're seeing even Europe and the United States, places whose infrastructure is far different from us, where everyone can work from home. They're still having to battle with the second wave.
Correct.
So,
well, you see, I think it's just simply that people tend to be a little bit careless about things. And this happens, let's face it, you know, we're all human beings. Those people in the US, those people in Europe, okay. I think, though, we lead a much more outdoor life in Kenya, and this is one of the reasons why I think our level of COVID infection is much lower than that in Europe and the US, okay? But at the same time, we have to realize it is something which is a reality, and therefore, we've got to take precautions. In the meantime, we've just got to slog it out. You know, the jobs are not going to come back immediately unless there is that improvement in the health. And let's face it, you know, we've got a lockdown until, well, the curfew is going to continue until the 3rd of January. Uhuru is in a very difficult place because, you know, obviously in the newspaper recently, Java are asking members of staff to leave, you know. So this is affecting especially, and as Hersey was saying, the tourism industry is really badly hit. And, well, 100 billion shillings is what we bring in from abroad, okay, in international tourism. Now, that will affect farmers' choice. That will affect the mama mboga, because those people eat, they in fact eat vegetables, they drink. So East African breweries is affected, but it goes right through the whole of the economy, because you have to remember, some of that is obviously paid in wages to people, but those people themselves are able then to buy sausages and meat and all the rest of it. So the whole of the effect of the drop in tourism will be felt right across the economy. It's important to keep that in mind.
Okay, okay. And let's also talk about manufacturing, because that is something that will definitely be affected, you know, with less demand for goods at a time like this. And Phyllis, at the beginning well, not really at the beginning of the year, mid-year, we saw a lot of optimism around opportunities presented for reinvigorating, renewing local manufacturing. And you know, a lot of people came out of the woodwork talking about innovations they have and how they're ready to take them to the market, whether to deal with COVID-19 or even beyond that as well. Looking back, have we capitalized on those innovations? Have we seen a change in how locally produced goods are viewed this year, bearing in mind we know the supply chain was you know, greatly affected by the disruption in travel and so forth?
Thanks for that, Wahiga. When you look at the year holistically, you must say that things could have been worse. But for the manufacturing sector, as you say, we did see a lot of opportunities emerge. Things like the local manufacture of PPEs, hygiene products being manufactured locally. I think we even saw ventilators being manufactured locally. And one of the things I really must commend the government, and especially the Ministry of Industry, CS Betty Maina, for, is the fact that we kept Kenya moving. There was a lot of support in developing workplace protocols, ensuring that even when there was a curfew, goods were able to move at night, the export products, and that industries were operating. So in the midst of everything, we did still manage as an economy to emerge strong. We didn't see any shortages in the stores. You remember at the beginning, everyone rushed down to shop and stock their house. But the sector ensured that we kept goods flowing in the market. And also in terms of pricing, we didn't see any price hikes on products. If anything, we did see the price of products like hygiene products come down. So all in all, I must say that things could have been worse. So we really must be grateful to government, to God, that really we have not had, it's been tough, yes, but we have seen some light at the end of the tunnel. So one of the key things we want to do is to see how we can nurture this nascent industry, these upcoming opportunities we have seen. As you have said, there's a period there that we struggle to get goods into the country. And I think my fellow panelist has also spoken about the struggle they had. And what that did is really made us look inward and say, for certain critical sectors, how do we build capacities locally so that we can supply some of these products locally? And it's a conversation I think as a country we need to take forward into 2021. Because if we're able to do that, these jobs that we have lost, we can recover them locally. We can also be able to utilize a lot of our raw materials, so the linkages with the agricultural sector and the opportunity to restart our economy. That can be done majorly if we focus on local production. So going into the future, ensuring that we create an environment that enables more entrepreneurs to start their businesses, to run them successfully. We reduce things like the tax burden and the issues of ease of doing business are addressed from a competitiveness angle. We'll be heading in the right direction. So there is light at the end of the tunnel. We did our manufacturing barometer survey. We do this quarterly. And the last quarter, one of the questions we asked is, how many people will be investing in the next 6 months? 50% of manufacturers will still be investing in the next 50 months. So it means that there's still that optimism within the sector that things will be fine. The challenge is the jobs that Dr. Maxi spoke about, because about 83% of them said that they'll not be hiring in the next 6 months. So that's a challenge, but what they did try to do is to sustain the jobs within the sector. But going forward, the issue of jobs is going to be a challenge. So anything we can do to create an environment that makes it possible for entrepreneurs to invest is critical, and it's something that we really urge government, even as they look at the tax policies into the next year. How do we minimize policies that really slow down the recovery for the sector? Thank you.
Okay, Mohamed Hersi, let me also bring you in. Yesterday we saw CS Najib Balala addressing tourism stakeholders in a webinar. He spoke of the need to reinvent, innovate around tourism if we want to rebuild that sector. Practically, how do you see this happening, and how do you see it impacting the sector positively? But first of all, talk to me about reinvention, injecting technology into the tourism sector. What does that look like?
Well, the tourism industry in Kenya has embraced technology, and we are not stopping at that. We're still continuing. You'll realize that the way we've done business, let's say, 5, 10 years ago, is not the way we are doing it now. You'll see more tourism players who are very active in the digital space, whether it is, YouTube, whether it is or any of the social media platforms where you sell your product and you sell your services. And we work very closely with many influencers and also writers, people who create and, they help a destination come up. So for us, when it comes to technology, and specifically when it comes to the MICE business, people have been saying, this could be the end of meetings. But, having a virtual meeting and physically going to a destination are two different things. Tourism is about going to a place, feeling a new environment, meeting new people. Well, shaking hands will take a bit of time, but, feeling the spirit of a place. You can have a virtual meeting with some people from Thailand, or you can say Mexico, but it is never the same like being in Cancun or being somewhere in Indonesia or wherever. So technology will play a big role, specifically when it comes to travelers who cannot come from some of the other continents. Let's, for instance, you have a conference for 500 people, and you've got some key players who are supposed to join you, let's say, from North America or even, let's say, Japan, who can make it. So as a hotel, you need to make sure that you have proper connectivity. And in this case, a lot of hotels have put their acts together, and obviously we also depend on the broadband, reliability of the country and the cost aspect. I'd like to commend, companies like Safaricom who have played a big role to make it easy for us. So it means that you may have, 80% physically attending, and then another 20%, joining virtually. And that has already been happening even in the past, but now it's going to be more, defined. On the other side, tourism players need to be on the social space, so that in the digital space, so that they can be seen. Okay. In the days of advertising on TV and radio alone is not going to hack it. So we need to go deeper, and that's the only way you're going even to reach the millennials who find themselves more on social media forums and platforms rather than that physical newspaper. So the question, Have we embraced technology? Certainly, yes. Is there more space? Big space again. So we will continue to do that.
Okay. I must say that don't forget TV Hersey, even as you encourage the digital move. Let me just slip that in. Even as I ask you this briefly, one of the things that we've had, and we've had this in the United Kingdom as we get to the Christmas season, is forming bubbles where families are told, okay, if you've been with your family for the last couple of months, then you can afford to, quote unquote, holiday in an exclusive bubble for the Christmas period, because there are concerns that we're getting to the festive season when the virus could spread as people get tired of the restrictions and really want to move around. Locally, we've heard that people are now more inclined to stay at Airbnbs, to stay at private homes for holiday, those who can afford to go on holiday, because they're concerned about mixing with others in larger hotels. Are we seeing trends like that as we get towards the holiday season? Could we see people with you know, nice spaces out there opening up their homes for people to have sort of private holidays as compared to the past when you felt very free to mingle in some of the larger, dare I say, cheaper hotels? By large, I mean in scale and size. What trends are we seeing?
The issue of hosts and Airbnbs and what we actually call them vacation rentals, but many people talk about Airbnb. Airbnb is just one channel out of probably even hundreds of them.
That's right.
But obviously Airbnb was one of the first ones. So vacation rentals is it's growing, and it's already been there in Kenya, and it used to be called homestays. Mm-hmm. Only that now people feel, you know what, because of the crowds, I may try a smaller place. But on the other hand, we were very proactive as tourism players. We drafted, it took a bit of time, but we came up with a very solid document, the COVID-19 protocols and guidelines, which was driven by the minister and working with Kenya Tourism Federation. And we have got guidelines, whether it is hotels, whether it's tour operators, travel agents, all of us together. So today, what has really helped us, and you'll also notice that when His Excellency the President is addressing the nation, hotels are separated away from the crowd because that's what we wanted. When it comes to hygiene and safety, hotels, way even before COVID, when it comes to hygiene, we work with some international brands. You know, you talk of the diversities of this world, you talk about Ecolabs, you talk about SGS, I'm sorry, I'm saying SGR, and the likes of Bureau Veritas, to make sure that hygiene levels are not compromised. We've done that. So some of the protocols is, for instance, in a hotel, we are no longer allowing you to serve yourselves at the buffet. A cook will serve you so that, because it's been identified that the serving spoon or at the buffet is a touch point, and that can be touched by, by the entire restaurant. So if one person is infected, so that means that everybody gets the risk of getting infected. So those are some of the things that we've done, including testing our staff to make sure that, we do all the things that needed to be done. So to answer your question, are people moving away from hotels? Not necessarily. This is the talk, yes. But there is enough for everyone. Is there space for vacation rentals? Of course, yes. But at the end of the day, once a client feels that they're safe and a particular establishment is adhering and is compliant to the guidelines and protocols that have been laid out, you'll have the confidence to come back. And I will tell you this, for post-beach resorts, domestic tourism and also meetings have started coming back. As we speak right now, we've got ISPAC, who are in Mombasa, and they are not able to stay in one hotel because of the compliance. In the past, they'll be in one hotel. But this time around, they are spread, I think, 3 or 4 hotels. Basically, because we don't want to put anybody at risk.
Okay, fair enough, Hersey. Thank you so much for that. Let me also bring in Samuel Karanja again. Samuel, I'm sure you've been listening to what each of the panelists have had to say. And there's a quote I read recently. Actually, I think it was by Phyllis Wakiaga in an interview she did. I want to hear your thoughts on this, Samuel. She spoke of 78% of manufacturers shifting their focus from increased profitability, revenue, and domestic market share, which was their focus pre-COVID, to now reducing costs, retaining jobs, and improving cash flow. Would you say that's been the same for your sector, Samuel Karanja? And how long do you see this being the focus before hopefully, we can begin to sort of revert to what the focus was at the beginning of the year?
Wahiga, there's no way you can be reducing the cost and also maintain the people you have employed. And what has happened in our sector is people have closed businesses. That means that they are not in business and their employees are also not in business. And some of the statistics which we have also seen, I think Daktari has said that in the studio, we are talking about 2 million or 1.7 million people have lost their jobs. But realistically, those are people who can be accounted for by Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. But ideally, when you look at the ground and when you look at some of even those independent statistics, it's about 7 million people who have lost their jobs. And majority of those 7 million people are in the business sector, the SME, people who cannot be able now to restart their jobs. And so people have already closed down. They can't be able to open their shops. They can't be able to do the vending that they used to vend. And one of the problems that you also have is financing, because you should have cushion money to finance this sector. And the policies which were put in place by the government to be able to cushion this sector, you find that there are policies which categorized SMEs in a way that is not realistic. And I think we really don't have a real definition of who an SME is, because sometimes we have those statistics which are not realistic. And some of them are World Bank statistics which are not real. They are not indigenous statistics of the reality of the people who are on the ground. So you find that when the measures have been put, especially in cushioning the SMEs in terms of financing, there are some of the things which have been put in place, the policies which have been put in place. When you go to the bank, when you go to different financial institutions that are mandated to dispense these finances, you find they are asking you for things which a small, medium entrepreneur cannot be able to produce. And you remember, I think the government gave 10 billion shillings, and when you look at the criteria to which that money was supposed to be dispensed and who it was supposed to dispense to, it closed a particular category of small, medium entrepreneurs. So from our perspective, especially for us small, medium entrepreneurs, we have been hit hard. When you look also at the manufacturing, we are talking about cottage industries. What policies govern cottage industries? And I can tell you this, Wahiga, without fear of contradiction, because we have our members now who are rethinking. Instead of us bringing electronics from China, why can't you also make bulbs here in Kenya? And I remember we were going through some of the processes of one of the traders, the things that some of these government agencies are asking for are unrealistic. When you look at China, China economy has grown because of cottage industry, whereby I am able to produce from my backyard. I'm able to produce from the balcony. I have 2 or 3 people who are fixing earbuds, who are fixing toothpicks, and I can be able to sell. But when you have some archaic policies which are governing cottage industry, and to add now on the pain, you find that now the cost of power is high. So when you look at that, it really discourages the upcoming local manufacturers as much as we want to migrate from importation to local manufacturing. So the people who can be able to maintain the manufacturers are people who have already been there, and they have already learned the ropes. But the people who are starting from the grassroots, the traders, ule mwananchi wa kawaida, they want to produce something, it becomes very hectic.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much for that. Let me get Dr. McPhee also here. And remember, you can weigh in on this conversation. 22422 is our SMS line. Please let us know your thoughts. What has been your 2020 experience from an economic perspective, whether you're employed, a business person as well. And we'll actually be able to take in some phone calls in the next few minutes. We'll start displaying the number at the bottom of the screen there in case you have any questions for any of the stakeholders that we have here in studio. And on Twitter, use the SMS tweet, rather the hashtag Daybreak. And I actually want to read one tweet here that I found a bit interesting. Let me see here. This was from, I think, was it Engineer Lazaro? Let me see if I'm able to pull that up. Yes, Engineer Lazaro, you say government should first of all try to regulate price of essential commodities, transport and rent before talk of possible salary reduction from the civil servants. Dr. McPhee, I don't know how practical that is in the kind of free market we are in, free economy that we have known as a country. But let me get your thoughts on that. And also for you who is in the education sector, there's also been massive disruption there. I don't know the last time you actually taught a physical class, and I don't know what that means for jobs. I don't know what that means for the growth and specialization of a sector like that as well. What are your thoughts, again, now that you have a chance to look back over the year?
Okay, well, you've asked me a number of different questions, but
pick one or two.
let me first of all actually just talk about what Mr. Karanja was saying, because I feel that he has hit the nail on the head very, very squarely in relation to archaic policies SME assistance not being realistic, you know. This, and to my mind, I think, you see, unfortunately, many of our people who are at the top of the economy, they've studied economics, possibly even at Harvard University, at, you know, top universities around the world. But we have to come down to the level of the 1 inch in this country. You know, for example, we're going to nationalize Kenya Airways. So that means that the 1 inchi in Kisumu, Nyalgongo, wherever, you know, Kiambu, the 1 inchi there are going to subsidize me flying to London. That's what our MPs want. Is that correct? Is that, you know, are we thinking, or are we just you know, kind of saying things which possibly are going to be attractive to voters? You know, we've got to think, and we've got to bring ourselves down to the level that Mr. Karanja was talking about. The SMEs are not being assisted sufficiently in Kenya. And, you know, where are the jobs in Kenya? Not in the formal sector. There are fewer than 2 million jobs in the formal sector in Kenya. There are 14 million jobs in the informal sector. So the SMEs have really got to be supported. And these archaic policies, and this, you know, says here, and you travel now from one county to another. I, driving my car, I asked my passenger, how much do I have to pay here? Oh, no, you don't pay. It's the matatu that has to pay. Who is paying the fare in the matatu? It's the 1 inchi. So the point is, our policies are all aimed at the rich people. And this is why, for example, you'll see an incredible increase in the number of Porsches, Audis, Mercedes-Benz, Jaguars in Kenya today, in Nairobi. The people who are looked after are the rich people, not the poor people. So, you know, we've got to change our thinking totally. But coming back to education, you see, it is a real problem. I know since the 13th of March, I've been teaching online. And as I tell people, you know, a lot of teaching has gone online, but unfortunately, how much learning? Because you get a group of students, they will go to a cyber cafe or something, a group of them, and they will start fooling around there. They're not really listening to you on the You're
not computer. Sure that you have their full attention, do
and
you?
We have all sorts of examples of, you know, a guy, he's present, but a student is sleeping in bed, and he's actually, you know, attending class. So you don't really know how much is being absorbed. But, you know, to my mind, when you look at the Finnish, which is the #1 education system in the world, they don't do homework in Finland. They spend, you know, a much shorter amount of time than the average American student and the average Kenyan student. And yet, they do incredibly well. So actually, you know, this period where people have not been going to school, if parents, and this, you know, the problem, for example, these youth who are going off to these parties and, you know, drinking alcohol and engaging in sex and all the rest of it, that is a reflection of poor parents. Parents have got to understand here, you've got to lead by example. James Reggae has a daughter who says, look, Dad, I want to marry a man like you. How many men? Okay. How many men can actually have daughters like that in Kenya?
And I see you're taking us on a different tangent, but I do get your perspective, your concerns about the...
No, because the youth of Kenya don't understand. I'm trying to get my students to understand all the time. Look, I have a past student who is the chief financial officer, Oscar Onyango. He's the chief financial officer of a company in Silicon Valley. I want my students to be able to do the same.
To get to that level.
But, no, tunacheza tu. So how do we make our youngsters serious? Well, the first thing is you've got to lead by example.
I see.
You've got to lead by example.
I see.
You know, parents are not taking things seriously. So, of course, our system is breaking down in Kenya. our system, our social system is breaking down.
I will call you in for another discussion because I see you have some strong thoughts on that. But I did want to ask you, you did raise concerns about the measures not trickling down to those at the very bottom. So, for example, one of the measures announced by government, and give me a brief answer to this because I'm told we need to take a break, is that people earning a gross monthly income of 24,000 shillings will not be subject to tax on their income. This would result in a saving of about 1,500 per month, for example. So you don't see measures like those having a...
No, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. But, the point is that we have so much regulation. Nairobi County says, we've closed down an illegal car wash in Lavington. Now, those young men are being usefully employed. They're actually running a business, doing an incredible service to society. They're closed down because Nairobi County says they're acting illegally. And Nairobi County will make their business difficult by going and closing them down, etc., etc. Now, we've got to change our views. Government, some people are just hell-bent on having power over one another. We've got to stop that. We've got to change that. Why?
Okay.
Because, if we're working together, those young men are being usefully employed, and even some young women as well. Let them be. They're not, just make sure that they don't, cause danger by, I don't know, littering the place, etc., etc. But, let's, in Asia, for example, street vendors are the norm there. And also it's the case in Kenya. But, you have a mama mboga. She has to run when she sees the askari coming from Nairobi County.
I see.
We've got to help those people, not make life difficult for them.
Okay, and I'll get into that. I'll even give my other panelists a chance to respond to that, but I'm told we do need to take a break. Before we take that break, nevertheless, some news are coming into our studios. We can confirm that Coast Waterworks Development Agency Chair and former Kilifi North Member of Parliament, Mustafa Idi, has passed on. Coast Waterworks Development Agency Chair and former Kilifi North Member of Parliament, Mustafa Idi, has passed on. He died while undergoing treatment at Premier Hospital in Mombasa. You may also remember him as a journalist who served in at least 2 media houses in the country before moving into politics. Coast Waterworks Development Agency Chair and former Kilifi North Member of Parliament, Mustafa Idi, has passed on. And of course, we pass our condolences to his family members and friends at this time. And that's some news coming into our studios at this time. Well, it's the 25th day of November 2020, this Wednesday. Thanks for staying with us. Let's take a short break. When we come back, I'm going to read some of your feedback. Remember, the hashtag is Daybreak. SMS line is 22422. And then we will have some more time to continue just thrashing through and understanding the state of our economy in 2020 with my panel. Thank you. Stay with us. We'll be right back.